Alright, 9.4 is a two-part lesson. This lesson here is not going to focus too much on teaching you how to factor. If you need that type of information, just go back to chapter 8.5 videos, because honestly, as long as you know how to create the combination and find the numbers, you should be pretty close to where we need you to be by the end of this section tomorrow. So the essential question is, how does factoring make the process of solving quadratic equations even easier? First off, if factoring creates a multiple of two values, the way it sets up, remember that factoring has two sets of parentheses equal to some, or actually just two sets of parentheses, which is something times something else, which means pretty much that if you're looking at two numbers, a times b equal to 0, and you consider the solutions, as long as a times b equals 0, if a is equal to 0, it doesn't matter what b is, because 0 times 1 is 0, 0 times negative 1 0, 0 times anything is 0. Also, if b is equal to 0, then it doesn't matter what a is, because anything times 0 is going to be 0, and so therefore it gives us two answers or two situations that we can do to work that out. Same thing goes with the way that we factor things, which is when something's set up like this. And what we have here is, and you want to write this down for your notes, if this is your factor and your factors are set equal to 0, again it has to be set equal to 0. What you can say is that if x plus 2 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0, then you know you have your answer. And so pretty much you take each factor and set it equal to 0, because again, 0 here means 0 times whatever that is makes 0. 0 here means whatever is here times 0 makes it. And so you solve this answer by using your typical algebra, getting x equals negative 2. Here you're adding 3, so you get x equals 3. And that is what you're looking at there. Those would be your two solutions. Again, just go into here with your calculator. If you were to plug that in, you would get negative 2 plus 2 in one parentheses. You would get negative 2 minus 3 in the other parentheses. And again, when you type that in, you get 0. Your other answer was 3. So if you plug in 3 for both of those x's, 3 plus 2, which we know to be 5, times 3 minus 3, which we know to be 0. Notice how, again, you get 0. So both of those answers work, because each of those answers leaves one of those parentheses to be 0. Alright, so all things considered, let's just go ahead and look at the example so we can get right to our work for the day and get this practice taken care of. So solve by factor. Remember, here we want numbers that multiply to be this times that, which is going to be a negative 22, and add to be negative 9. So we make a tree for 22 if necessary. These are the only numbers that make 22, so remember that the bottom number means that your big side is negative. The fact that it makes a negative 22 means that your small side is positive. We then, once we find the numbers, which in this case is positive 2, negative 11, we take that value, if you remember, and put it over each number. So x over 2, x over negative 11. So our factors are x plus 2, x minus 11. And because of that equals 0, we've got to make sure we bring that down. And so what we do is everything that we did before, but you bring your factors down and set them equal to 0. And just like what we had on the initial problem here, if this is true, if x minus 2 times x minus, or x plus 2 times x minus 11 equals 0, then we split it and we solve it. So x plus 2 equals 0, and x minus 11 equals 0, which means in this case, again, subtract 2, that means x is negative 2. Over here we add 11, that means that x is 11. Again, if you want proof, take your calculator, take those two numbers and plug them in. Parentheses negative 2 squared minus 9 parentheses negative 2 minus 22 equals 0. So it works. Take the same thing with 11. Actually, I'll go ahead and copy and paste it, because this just does have two spots. So 11 here, 11 there, and look at that, you get the answer of 0. So those are the only two answers that, or only two solutions that you have here. And if you remember, whenever it comes to quadratics, we could have two solutions, 0 solutions, 1 solution. Any of those things are possible. In a lot of these things today, you're going to see two solutions, because they are all factorable the way that we need them to be. B. Again, a second type of question you're going to see today. Here we're going to look for numbers that multiply to be positive 12 and add to be negative 4. I don't think that's what I want. I think it should be negative 8. So turn that into an 8, please, because I don't think that that is going to work the way that we need it to. Anyway, 12 leaves us 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3, and 4. This negative 8 means that our big side is negative. The fact that it makes a positive 12, if you remember, the only way you multiply to make a positive is if both sides are the same. This is why we needed an 8, because I went the wrong way in your initial problem. So again, make sure you switch that. So our numbers are negative 2 and negative 6. And again, once you do that, if you remember, you take this fraction and you put it over both numbers. You then reduce both fractions, but with practice you understand that 3x over negative 2 does not reduce, but 3 over 6 reduces to be 1/2, so that actually makes x over negative 2. And so therefore your two factors are 3x minus 2 and x minus 2. And again, don't forget to bring down your equal 0. Once you have it factored, set equal to 0, again you split it and you solve it. You take each one and you set them both equal to 0. Here to solve, we'll add 2 to both sides, 3x equals 2. Then we'll divide by 3 and get that x is equal to 2/3. Over here we're going to add 2 to both sides, getting x equals 2. And again, I kept this short so I could actually work this out for you. Here we have 3 parentheses 2/3 close squared minus 8 parentheses 2/3 plus 4, and look at the answer we get. Same thing if we did a 2, 3 parentheses 2 squared, sorry about that, minus 8 parentheses 2 plus 4 equals, and again you get the answer of 0, which tells me that those two answers work. So again, that's what we're looking at. The third type of problem is a GCF factoring. Notice that we only have two things here, and it's not the difference between this question and the one we saw before where it was like 5x squared plus 10 equals 0, where you would subtract 10 and then divide by 5 using algebra, is that you cannot use algebra when there's an x squared and an x. If there's both, you can't do it. You have to make sure that you understand that if there's an x squared and an x, that you have to actually factor this. But the good news is you can factor it because there is a GCF. 5 and 20 can both be divided by 5. Both of these have one x that we can take off. We then leave what, just x minus 4 left over, and that is our factor. And again, this is factored. This is 5x times x minus 4 equals 0, which means again you split and solve. 5x equals 0, just like x minus 4 equals 0. Well, if 5 times 0, so 5 times something 0 and you divide by 5, you're going to get x equals 0. Over here you add 4 to both sides, you're going to get x equals 4. Now I'm not going to be looking for the work on your work here, on your computer work, but just make sure that you understand how to get it, because if you make any mistakes on the quiz, that's not going to be smart. So again, just checking that out. 5 times 0 squared minus 20 times 0. Notice that it gives me 0. Go up and change that into 4s, and you should see the same thing, that you get the answer of 0, so the answer works. So this is pretty much a basic factoring. It shouldn't be as hard as it was when we were in the factoring section, but again, make sure you answer whatever questions you can answer, so that when you come back, or that when you move on to this tomorrow, that you can be ready, because tomorrow you're going to have to know how to do this, because it's not always going to be a 0 on that side. And so tomorrow you're going to actually have a number over there, and so in order to really do this, you have to understand what you're going to be needing to do. So again, make sure you get a good amount of practice today. Make sure you ask questions, and make sure you are working again to make sure you get caught up. So other than that, again, go to Math XL, and good luck.